We don't need votes. We got more votes than anybody's ever had. We need to watch the votes.
My instruction, we don't need the votes. I have so many votes.
People, I don't need any votes. We got all the votes we need. I don't need votes. All I want to do is make sure that we guard our vote. It's guard. We stop the steal, okay? So we don't need votes. We need protection of the votes once they're cast.
Commander Bobby Jones, great to have you back on. I think you are the only guest on this show who is averaging 1 million views per episode. You've set the bar high, but let's get serious, because this latest line from the former president, I mean, to me, it's reminiscent of that Stalin quote when he said, "I don't care who votes and how, I care who counts the votes and how." How worried should we be?
I think it's very concerning because, save Stalin and a couple of dictators historically, very few have been bold enough to state that is their strategy, their entire campaign strategy. And when you look at other telltale signs, you see this is what's actually being attempted. For example, the Trump ground game to generate votes is much weaker than it was in 2016. If you look at how he's campaigning, what he's saying, it's almost like he doesn't care to try to garner votes, because he realizes as long as I have people that will count on my behalf, that's all that matters. And, being a military vet over 20 years, I've been in locations around the world where this is standard. I mean, it still dominates the news. Venezuela is the latest. Zimbabwe before that. We can go all the way back to whenever. But what really blows my mind is America being held as the standard around the world as free, fair, democratic elections, because we keep refining our process to make it more fair. We have someone who's not only willing to come into office on ulterior expectations, but is telling you what he's doing, and he will continue to do it if he gets back in office. I can tell you this personally affects me because I'm running for, county commission in Fayette County, Georgia, my small little county. But in the state of Georgia, we've had many things in the legislature here in the last week and a half, to do exactly that, not to control the votes, not even control the turnout, but to control who counts them.
You pointed out that his ground game is terrible, and there's been a lot written about that. I mean, the investment in GOTV, get out the vote infrastructure by the Republican Party, is shockingly low. Part of that is just sort of the endemic corruption that happens when your party becomes a laundering mechanism for a family, right? Part of it is this attitude that, it's less about turning out the vote than making sure we watch who is voting. And if their ground game is bad, their lawyer game is as good as it gets. They have filed so many preemptive suits. That is what really scares me. This is not Trump just firing from the hip, saying stupid things that he hasn't thought about. This is well thought out, and he has smart people making it happen.
What we are seeing is a huge seismic shift in electoral strategy. This is a strategic thing that has been slow fed to the American public to where now you believe this is standard operation. Those of us who are old enough to remember elections when we were younger, this would never have been an actual strategy. In 2000, Bush v. Gore, there was no type of apparatus set up like this. They fought for every vote. And then once the Supreme Court ruled on it, that was it. What we now see is strategy that's now being migrated into American culture. And that should terrify everybody, because I hate to break it to people, the Constitution is not something we enforce only when it's convenient. It's not only when you win do we sit there and say, I believe in that parchment that laid out the diagram for this democratic republic. No, it's through good, bad, it's through winning and losing. It is a standard. And now the standard has shifted to, I'm going to take legal action before one vote is cast. Let that marinate, people. We're talking about, we don't even know what's happened yet. Early voting in the state of Georgia starts October 15th. And there are lawsuits waiting to go before a vote is cast. The intimidation piece on this too. They're investing more money in poll watchers than actually getting people to the polls. They want you to feel intimidated even when you do cast your legal vote. They want you to feel that tingle on the back of your neck. Are they going to count my vote? Are they going to contest it? Oh, I guess I shouldn't even try to vote. So instead of trying to appeal to the American people with better ideas that appeal to a broad side of America, the idea is we'll take the extreme ideas, remove all barriers in place to make sure that it's fair, and implement it in a very dictatorial fashion, right? And I'm speaking from experience. I was a United Nations peacekeeper in Liberia after their civil war, having to help protect those elections. The United Nations had to come in and show them how to run an election. And I saw what voter intimidation looked like. And let me tell you something. If it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, and has feathers, you're probably dealing with a big, huge duck. And that's what this is right now. There is no way in history that you can tell me in America, and this is coming from a black guy born and raised in the Deep South. We've seen this before in our history as well. So understand, we're seeing a playbook that's been dusted off, revamped, and now we're getting 2.0 of it.
Don't sanitize this for us, because when the former president says poll watching, it sounds, kind of plain.
Mm-hmm.
But there is it's coded. There's a racial element to it. When he's talking about watching polls, he is signaling directly to groups like True the Vote, which shows up in body armor and guns, and they keep their distance, right? Because there are certain laws. But for some reason, they only go to minority communities, right? They only watch the vote in places where their guy might lose. And the flashbacks that these communities must experience to a time when they literally risked their lives to have their voices heard. Yeah, go for it.
Right. No. So let's go there. What's really mind-boggling to me is you have these groups that you mentioned. They go on Amazon.com and buy cheap little gear and cosplay being a commando, and they sit there and they think they will intimidate people. Well, what you need to understand about American history is we fight the most when we are denied something. And when you're talking about populations, especially minority populations that, guess what, have the highest propensity to serve in the military. 1 out of 4 black men ages 18 to 45 served in the military. And think about the generation we're talking about, the GWAT generation, Global War on Terrorism generation. Do you think someone like me has come back home to Fayetteville, Georgia, to go vote and to see someone in the parking lot trying to stop me? There will be smoke in the city. Smoke in the city. And they need to be careful about that. This is not the 1950s. And as much as nonviolence worked then, people are going to fight for their rights. But here's the thing. If you're willing to spend bandwidth, money, time, propaganda to deny people the right to vote, their constitutionally guaranteed right to vote, the next question you should ask is why? Why are they trying to stop people from voting? Is it because they're out of ideas? Is it because they feel like their golden idol is not going to win without that intimidation? If he's so great, then why are you trying to stop people from casting the vote? If so many people like him, why are you trying to specifically target certain demographics to not vote for him? It's a question that America needs to ask themselves. Is this what you pictured when you learned about how our government worked in civics class? And is this the standard of leadership? Do you want this moving forward? Because what happens when it's the left that has power and they implement the same thing? Now you're going to say, oh, it's Hugo Chavez 2.0, blah, blah. Well, these are the foundations of a new shift. And that's why me and you and others like us are vocal. We don't have time to be polite. The sake of democracy, the case for democracy, and most importantly, the example moving forward for democracy is on the line in how this election is conducted. So if you feel like you're going to be intimidated, there are so many numbers you can call to ensure your right to vote. And just my last point on this is, if they're willing to do this just to get in office, what other norms and laws are they going to toss aside once they get in?
That is such a good point. And I'm going to put resource links in the show notes. We'll make sure to do that because even on voting day, if you're turned away, there are things you can do. There's the provisional ballot system. There are things you can do if you're in one of those precincts that has identified you because of where you live or the color of your skin as someone to harass. There is a way to fight back peacefully, of course. But how does this end, Bobby? Do you think if Trump suffers a serious enough defeat at the ballot box that these cosplay warriors like retreat into the shadows, or are we looking at J6 2.0?
Well, I think, and it's kind of funny you asked this, Ken. I literally was thinking about this maybe 2 days ago. I think what's going to happen is this. America will repudiate this because I think people believe enough is enough. There are people that just have Trump fatigue. They're sick and tired of the lies and hearing the same thing over and over again. But like a forest fire, you put out the main blaze, but there are going to be smoldering embers all over the place. When you're dealing, and you know this, this is psychological warfare, right? And one of the things that we learned in the global war on terrorism is it's one thing to fight tangible people. It's much harder to fight ideas that can be reconstituted, separated, hide, marinate, and come back. So I hate to break it to you, America, eternal vigilance is required moving forward. You no longer can take for granted the fact that you can go cast your ballot and vote for who you want to. No, you have to make sure that you're registered properly. You have to know what your rights are. I hate to say it, you have to become more involved in your own civic duty. And we were warned about this 200 years ago, but that's the key. You have to. So I believe we'll put it out, but I believe just like we had to establish the Department of Homeland Security after 9/11, there's a new mind shift and a new paradigm that we have to deal with moving forward. That's the Trump effect. The Trump effect is if we don't fight to keep what we have as a democracy and to continue to make it better, it will go away. It will be taken.
It's Ken Harbaugh. Quick break here because I have two favors to ask. We're off to a great start with the Ken Harbaugh Show on YouTube, but the podcast needs a little love. Please click the link below to follow, rate, and review. The success of shows like this really does depend on those ratings. And if you haven't yet followed me on Patreon, please check it out. It's free to sign up, or you can pitch in a few bucks a month. Every dollar goes back into this show and our pro-democracy efforts, including the reporting from Ukraine. Go to patreon.com/Ken Harbaugh. Thanks for the support. Speaking of civic duty, you're running for county commissioner. I know it's a pretty purple area. Do you want to link down below so people can help you out?
Yes, I would love to put a link to my website. It's BobbyJones2024.com. And let me be honest, I did not plan to run for office. I was asked literally 2 days before ballots were due if I'd do it. I had just retired. And, the first few times that we've talked, I didn't want to mention this because the national crisis, and I'm going to say it's a crisis, is too great. I'm doing what I can. It's running all day to try to get into an office that's like a part-time position and, but it's a full-time job. But the reason I wanted to run for office when I was asked was these people helped raise me, right? And when we moved here, I was 8 years old and I was a black kid in a basically all white 95% county. And I learned something about America. We were embraced by these people, by the white people and stuff like that. They judged us the right way. They judged us on our content, our character, how we behave. Next thing I know, I went from being the only little black kid in Little League Baseball there to my parents being on the Little League Baseball board and stuff like that. My first job was at the Chick-fil-A in Fayetteville. So I say this because I want to help protect the people that literally helped raise me and show me what the best of America could be. I wouldn't have gone to the Naval Academy. I wouldn't have served in the Navy if I wasn't encouraged to do that by these people. And they didn't look like me. You know what I'm saying? And so when I come after Trump and I come after this, that, and the other, it's because I've seen the best of America and it has sustained me through the worst of the world when I was on deployment. And so now these people that helped raise me are in their older age or their golden years. And I want to make sure that we not only protect them, but motivate young people like I was motivated 30, 35 years ago. Right. And so I'm adamant about this. I fight people like Trump because I know what the real America is, and we don't focus on it enough. And it's been something that's been tearing us apart. And when we deployed overseas, our enemies sure as hell didn't break us into sections. They just wanted us dead because we're Americans. They didn't discriminate. You know what I'm saying? So I come back home to a place where I get to help give back to the people that gave me so much. And that's the only reason I'm really running, to be honest.
Very well said. And your thoughts on patriotism, which we turned into a standalone episode, one of the most viral episodes on this whole network. We'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. If you haven't seen it, you have to. Commander Bobby Jones, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks, Ken. I appreciate it. Anytime.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Meidas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.